So just like that, we're already at the end of the first split, and the last 2 weeks of competition were incredible. We got to see the Copa Elite 6 tournament in LATAM, we saw triple play days back to back in North America, and a whole host of big matchups in Europe. So I'm going to break down the best moments from all of it and give you a rundown of the highlights from all 3 regions. If you go on to enjoy the video, drop a like. If you want to help support the channel and be tuned for more to come, then hit the subscribe button and give it a share if you've got any friends that you know will enjoy the videos that we're making and want to be a part of this community that we're growing. So with that out the way, let's get straight into it. So kicking off in LATAM, where we saw the first tournament we've had so far this season, we saw many teams fight well, but it was Liquid who were to become the champions of the Copa Elite 6, and with that the whole of Latin America. After a rough final week in the BR6, where they had some shaky performances like a loss to Black Dragons, even with Nesk dropping 23 kills, they were determined to redeem themselves in the Copa Elite 6. They manoeuvred themselves through the competition all the way to the semis, where they faced up against Team 1, and although they gave them a really good run for their money, it was Team Liquid with their experience and tournament prowess that was able to see them over the line. They grinded out a great comeback win after being a map down in the best of 3 and later on in the third map being up against match point for multiple rounds, completing the fight back with a big 8-7 win, heading themselves to the finals. KDS almost did enough for Team 1 to take it, but Nesk and Paulu, backed by the rest of the Liquid squad, refused to be silenced, and I think the big difference in this game was the mental and cognitive stamina from Liquid. They are all experienced players at the highest level of competition and have more experience than most teams in the region when it comes to keeping themselves mentally checked in a best of 3 or 5 game. Team 1 had strong stints in the first map, taking Liquid's map, and a second win in the start of map 3, but overall, and by the time the third map was in the later stages, it was Team Liquid who were still winning their 50-50s and successfully breaking down their opponent's strategy. However, I really do want to shout out this ex-Black Dragons roster that are now Team 1 though. They have really shown their worth as players and shown that they are able to pull out big performances against the top teams in the region that are expected on a big org like Team 1, and especially in Rainbow Six specifically, considering how good of a showing the Team 1 roster put in last year. And talking on Team 1, it was those same players on the new MIBR roster that Liquid was set to face in the final of the Copa Elite 6. So with 2 top 4 teams of last season in the first final of this year, everyone was interested to see who had made the most progression in this new season and meta. The best of 3 kicked off with Oregon, both rosters showing how much this finals meant to them, as these teams were neck and neck trading round after round, and before we knew it, we found ourselves heading to overtime as the game couldn't have been any closer. That trend continued as we went to max overtime. A big 16-8 performance from Lucid was enough to silence the gunners of Liquid, with MIBR taking a big 8-7 win on Liquid's map pick, needing one more map to win their own map and take it all. We jumped into Coastline next, and you always know in a big close matchup that it's going to get spicy when you see the most wild map in the map pool rear its head. The double pressure from Team 1 was great. They really prioritise trades, and often you will see them double up and keep throwing bodies at the trade, but intelligently. The players were already close enough connected to correctly trade, as the supporting player was often in another angle positioned instantly to peek as soon as their teammates started firing. They clearly believe in their gun skill and understanding of when to get aggressive and when not to. However, after a clean flawless round from Liquid, players like Nesk really started to hit full stride and outfragged MIBR for the last few rounds, and with this we got to see every single map played out from the start of this tournament, showing how competitive LATAM is, as we went on to map 3 on Consulate, and again on Consulate they went back and forth trading blows. There was great objective play from MIBR. LATAM is often criticised of pure aggression and lack of strategy, but MIBR showed otherwise with beautiful objective play, plants and overall team performance, especially from the supports of Fools and Felipox. But the shot calls and trade game just wasn't enough on another aggressive map like Consulate, as the man, the myth, the legend, after a quiet second map, Paulu dropped a 19-5 performance and won a 2v4 to win the tournament and the split for Liquid. Nesk and Paulu truly are 2 of the most valuable players in the world. They are 2 players that are on that creme de la creme level of professional Siege players, and very hard to replace. They literally just came off the back of a grueling matchup against Team 1. To come in and have a massive performance in a hard fought grand finals is incredible. As for MIBR, they truly should be proud of themselves. They were a few rounds away from pushing Liquid to the limit and potentially stealing it for themselves. Even on a new roster, these players decided to stick together and build a long-term plan, and I think it's safe to say though that after all they've developed in these last 2 seasons, and now with such a strong and charismatic showing in this first tournament of the year and specifically the finals, they are a solidified top 4 team in Latin America. What a truly incredible and classic game of Siege this was, and I'm so excited to see how both teams size up against international competition at SI. Anyways, GG's to both, and congrats to Liquid for retaining their spot as top dogs of not just Brazil, but all of Latin America. So with our LATAM champions crowned of the first split, let's move on to North America, where we saw 3 play days in a row. First off, I just want to say, and this goes for EU and pretty much every week for Latin America actually, how much respect and appreciation I have to give to all of the support staff for all these tier 1 teams for how much prep work they would have had to do in this massive Super Week. So many games back to back in such a short amount of time I can imagine can be a very difficult task, and I think it shows that the old school problem we used to have in Siege of analysts and coaches just collecting free checks is not much of a problem anymore, as we really saw some great strategy and great performances out of all these teams in a jam-packed week. Mirage had one of the most impressive ends to the split out of any team in North America, as they continued their great form from the previous week and collected another 3 wins on the bounce, propelling themselves up into the 3rd position, which I'm sure they'll be super happy about considering it's their first season as a roster and how things started in the first few games. And none of the teams they beat were slouches. In the first playday of the Super Week, they narrowly edged out SSG 8-7. They then rolled through playday 2, beating Disrupt Gaming, but I think the most impressive feat of them all was on that 3rd and final playday of the split, where they beat out the league frontrunners, Sonics. Mirage have just got better and better these last 5 playdays, and in this Sonics matchup we saw Benji have the best game of his season so far, and on the other hand Grixer be shut down early in so many rounds, and this was a massive hindrance for Sonics as they've leaned into his aggression a lot this season, and similar to many other times this season, it was Hot and Cold and Benji who were the stars of the show, with Benji dropping a cool 13-3 KD. I think this strategy was so strong from Mirage and it led to a few misuses of utility from Sonics, so with Grixer being shut down, the fraggers of Mirage were able to overpower any Sonics player trying to get aggressive and level the man count. Benji is one of the most exciting young entry players making a name for himself, and I really can't wait in a few years to see where he's progressed to and what he's potentially achieved when it comes to accolades. Along with Hot and Cold, these two have been one of the best aggressive duos in the world. Hot and Cold deserves so much credit for his incredible revenge tour, and a top 4 finish first split on a new roster is very commendable. I also want to shout out Dream and Loading on support. They've both picked up their consistency since starting their winning run, and with Dream specifically, he's not needed to make many flashy plays, just quietly going about his business and holding it down. So congrats to Mirage for bouncing back, and I look forward to seeing them in the 2nd split of this season. And OXG were damn sure happy with this result as well, as after their close overtime win to DZ a few days earlier, they were teed up for the 1st place spot as they played Beast Coast in the final playday. They won this matchup 7-4, but I wanted to highlight the DZ game as it was such a great game and one of the best games of the season so far, as OXG picked a map they permaban in the likes of Coastline and took a big 8-7 win against their top 4 rivals of last season, potentially doing some reviewing of Darkzero's close win to Mirage on Playday 1. Yaga and even more so Kino had another incredible game for himself, showing his versatility in ability to make plays with all types of operators from mute to Twitch. But what I was most impressed with out of OXG in this game was the coordination. So many crossfires on attack, really working well together to isolate individual players of Darkzero, using intel and making sure to communicate it well between each other. DZ had immaculate strategy as usual, so props to OXG for being able to dismantle it. The level of competition is so exhilarating in the NAL, and with minimal utility dump, there's even more 50-50 gunfights. Specifically in this round, I liked Foxay using Oryx. I would love to see the pros develop Oryx. He forces your flank player, usually Nomad, to expend 1 or more air jabs for hatches on their flank, opening up opportunities on other lanes around the map to flank and get aggressive or do runouts. He also time wastes and forces manpower for the attackers to watch their back, meaning opening walls, droning, utility clear can take longer with less time to execute. I think Darkzero had a very good game though. I think what gives OXG an advantage is the aggressive talent they have. If combined properly with good teamwork and strategy, they can be devastating, as every player can hold their own weight, and it means they can afford to make plays like double running out of an air jab, because they don't need to rely on any specific player being alive in the right position to hit those shots. And same with man disadvantage, even in a 2v4 it can easily be flipped or equalized by any of their players. I think it's so difficult to pull off solo hero plays when you're playing Darkzero, and even on a map like Coastline, outside of a few missteps, OXG realised that. As for DZ, Eclipse of course had another incredible game, even on support, but I think realistically the bottom line is, the difference between a win and a loss for Darkzero was a quiet performance from Hyper, going 5-14. Add Hyper's typical 10 plus kills and multiple entry/opening kills, they would have been able to get the win over the line potentially, even in regulation, but it's the plaudits that should go to OXG for having enough gunpower and coordination to shut him down. Respect to every player for settling so well into a new team dynamic, and it seems they will continue to grow from here. I truly cannot wait to see OXG at the Invitational. The form their players are in, with the coordination coming out of them, they can do serious damage there with a lot of big teams in various regions not having their previous consistency. And Darkzero's first split ended disappointingly as they took a 4-7 loss to TSM on the second playday, and with a bye on the third playdate, had to sit back and watch as other teams decided their fate for them. And overall, it just wasn't enough as they ended the first split in the 6th position, being directly closed out by TSM, who finished in the 5th spot just above them. In the TSM DZ game, I was very impressed with the entry kills on attack for TSM, as Achieved and Bolo did an excellent job on putting the man advantage in their favour early round, and being aware enough to deny the trade. The gunpowder of DZ lacked again this game, and I honestly think that it's been one of their biggest issues this season, as one or two players seems to always be lagging behind regardless of their role. There's so many talented gunners in NAL and whole teams full of them, so having one or two players off the pace can punish you. And in the final day, TSM faced up against DG, who also directly pushed them out from a top 4 spot, finishing 4th themselves. It was a good matchup for their playstyle in the likes of Disrupt, and it went on to be a great game. We saw some really nice setups from Disrupt, and weirdly a very disjointed TSM struggled to deal with it on Consulate. Some of their big players like Charla and Bolo's timing just seemed to be off second half, with Charla having one of his worst games in a while. Iconic on the other hand had so many great impact kills throughout this game, dropping an MVP performance and having another great showing on Consulate, going 17-4, and in the last round he truly was the difference maker to win it for them.
There's a lot of angles that Iconic can work as well. Damage dealt to Achieved as the last EE1D goes off. They'll find him. Iconic gets him through the verticality. Nitro Cell out. It doesn't bag Retro as this plant's looking to go down. Oh, no. Gio's got another one coming out of thin air, but it's not able to secure it either. That's going to be two big kills here for Disrupt. This is all down to Chala. He's trying to swing on through, but Iconic with 2. He's able to close it out inside of round 12. Disrupt beat TSM.
Oxygen 1st place, Sonic 2nd place, Mirage 3rd place, and Disrupt in 4th. Who would have thought? And finally, jumping into EU, we saw some big matches between a lot of the top teams in the region. After picking up a big 7-4 win against their rivals G2, BDS had a hard finish to the season, in a great game taking an 8-7 loss to Cowana, and then a crazy 2-7 loss to Virtus Pro. I think in the Virtus Pro game, BDS were trying some different things out as we saw them switch roles on attack with Renshiro on Sophia and Elems on Sledge. I don't think it was super effective, but like when they played with Shaiko and Ace, it made them less predictable for example, but they seem to just not be switched on and not fully focused. But the game I really want to get into was their game against Cowana, which again was one of the best games of this season so far. In a top 3 game for the season, we saw Cowana take a huge win for themselves, narrowly beating BDS 8-7. I massively respect the bravery of Cowana this season. They've played their game this season, regardless what team they're playing, top or bottom. In this game on defense, their measured aggression was excellent. They weren't scared to get out onto the map and contest BDS at entry points, but they knew when to fall back for manpower on site in the late round. And we saw Cowana follow on with G2's great Echo drone on Consulate jumping up Piano Hatch in CEO. Cowana took the Meeting Hatch on Oregon and applied the same concept. So cool. Man though, Siege really is fine margins. Check out how close it was to working.
But how much longer can they do this? Up pops the second Yokai, and there's the kill. Grizzly, in comes the man to pick up the diffuser. A ball tries to get it down. This is all a war between Echo and the final man, and there it is. What a round from Cowana, but no Des! He manages to get it back on the ground with a fraction of a second, and Kendrew, he loses his life. What are we seeing here?
And at BDS being 2-5 down, we saw what a top team is made of, fighting all the way back to overtime after being up against match point for multiple rounds, and the quality really shined through as we saw a Bride 3k clutch and a Shaiko 4k to keep them in the game. Truly incredible players showing what they will likely need to do at some point in their upcoming invitational run if they want to be world champions. But we'll need to see more than that however, as it wasn't enough, as the coordination of Cowana closed out BDS and a Vulcan shield kill in the 1v1 won it for them. These teams match up perfectly and this game will go down as a classic match in Siege history. And with that result, Cowana secured top 4 in their first season in Tier 1 and BDS consequently knocked off their first position into second by Navi. So much respect for Cowana, and Anarchic said in their first game of the season, top 4 is what they're aiming for, and a lot of people, and rightly so, thought he was just being confident in his team, but really they've proven it with great performances and they've backed up their talk, and I'm so excited to see where this team can go in the future. And it was the UK massive as we saw Navi finish top spot as they had a pretty good week for themselves, defeating Rogue in a dominant fashion, winning winning 7-1 and then a close 7-5 win to Empire. Their third game against G2, they did get beaten pretty hard, 2-7, but with the BDS VP result, they were still able to secure that top spot. In the Rogue game, I noticed that Rogue seemed to struggle with something that they struggled with last year, losing drones too easily and too quickly, leaving them in situations with minimal map control, having to force to execute, not knowing the exact live locations of players on site like Blur who can make crazy plays and allowing them to shine. And Navi clearly read into this as Doki spoke in the post-match interview that it was something they had planned to target when preparing for Rogue. In the second game against Empire, they really imposed themselves on Empire and made it a struggle for them to deal with the adaptability from Navi. They were able to make openings on attack and defense, and particularly on defense for a second game in a row, they played to shoot drones and fell back, and they frustrated Empire. Every single player in this team has the gun skill to win attacks, even when in a disadvantageous position, and the three-pronged trident of Doki, Blur and Nath have this ability and incredible game sense to understand when they see a gap in the defense and an opening and an opportunity to make a play.
Both of those bandits, it did manage to get the electrical that had been thrown over from the rotate. Oh! Blur sees an opportunity and he capitalizes. And you said before, Blur does Blur things. Standing in the middle of sight, he's going to pull out one of those goo mines from his leg.
I think this meta of a lot more aggression and looseness really hurts a team like Empire. Their super structured, predictable play is not effective enough anymore, especially when they don't have enough gun power. I still think personally, if in some world they were able to pick up one of the top aggressive fraggers or flex players in the world and allowed them the freedom to make plays while still playing their structured style, they would have had a lot more success so far this season. But they finished the split on a more positive note, beating out Team Secret, their direct rivals, 7-5. I think the fact that Empire have played as a team for so long on this map was a bit of a problem for Secret, as they still seem to be trying to get comfortable in their roles. Empire do the same take over and over, but because both of these teams are struggling, I feel like the coordination and droning out of Empire, along with a great game from Joystick and Dan on their entry roles, was too much for Secret to handle. I think if this roster had had another 6 months under their belt and they had played the same game, I think the result might have turned into Secret's favour, as we saw some good things out of some of their players, Prano especially, and that result pushed Team Secret down into 10th and Empire up into 9th, so you could tell how important it was for both teams and why we saw such a close game. I don't think Empire will be overly thrilled about going up one spot into 9th, as they know that they're capable of much more than that. As for Team Secret, I feel the same, as these players individually are very talented and they've had better performances on different teams or different iterations of the Secret roster. The Secret players from last season had a great second stage, and Sleben and Gomfi were on the Sonics roster who had a pretty good showing last season. And as for all of them, they were definitely doing more than finishing in the last spot. So hopefully with a bit of downtime and no preparation for the Invitational, they'll have some time to gel and come back much stronger in the next split. It's been such an electrifying season so far. So many big upsets, from Ints beating FaZe, Beast Coast beating TSM, and many teams this season showed that they are competitive. And yeah, the level of competition has just been excellent this season. Almost every team across the biggest 3 regions has the ability to pull off the upset. Combine that with best of ones and we've had some crazy games. I'm truly so excited for the Invitational that isn't far away now, and there's just so much to talk about. Let me know in the comments what team you're looking forward to performing there, and who do you think will be the winner and take it all. It's so hard to call, and to be honest, I just can't wait to see it for myself. Look forward to lots of different videos coming up, and when the next stage starts, look out for more week-to-week roundups as well. I really hope you enjoyed, and thank you for being part of this journey on this first season. This is my first split now doing YouTube, and I've been so happy to see how well the channel's grown, and so thank you for every single one of you that subscribed, watched, left a comment, dropped a like, anything. I just really appreciate it, and I look forward to how the channel will grow in the future and all of you being part of that. So if you enjoyed this video anywhere near as much as I enjoyed making it, drop a like. If you want to see more, drop a subscribe, and give it a share if you think any of your friends will enjoy it. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.